If you were to close your eyes and not look at who the finance minister is who's reading out the budget and not peep between your fingers, you will not make out whether it is Mr. Chidambaram or Mr. Jetli. It will be exactly the same. And for a government that prides itself on development, let's look at three of the most important social development budgets that are required. Education requires upwards of 6% GDP to implement the Right to Education Act. Look at the budget. I'm talking to you now even before the budget has been read. It will give you less than 3%. Right to healthcare requires approximately 3% of gross domestic product. Listen carefully to the budget. Public healthcare will be less than 0.9%, maybe 1%. And look at the right to food, where 80% of our population is below a poverty line per capita of 100 rupees a day. You need 3% GDP. You'll be lucky if you get 0.9%. And one more, judiciary. Everybody says, delays in courts and so on. India has 1/5 the number of judges that there should be. So if you have so few judges as compared to the number of cases, so obviously cases will take long. The budget for the judiciary may be 2-3% GDP. Courtrooms, employing more judges, etc., etc. You need maybe 2 or 3% GDP. It is less than 0.8%. So listen very carefully to these figures. It will help you understand whether there is going to be any social development at all. Listen to the figures very carefully. And then you'll realize that behind all the jargon of these budget figures, it is business as usual. Politics has changed, the budget is the same. If you look at India, it's a country where if you put in a strict regime, you will not have a fiscal deficit. You choose not to tax. What taxes other countries have, the developed countries have? High taxes, high services, honesty. Here we give the rich benefit, concession, SOPs. Lower your taxes, collect some, don't collect some, and no services. And you cry that we can't pay for the services such as the Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme. We can't pay for it. The Right to Food Act, they say postpone implementation. We don't have the money. But you have the power to tax people, give proper services. Why would any capitalist, let's say, protest against a tax if he feels that that money is properly and honestly used? Look at our banking system. It's on the verge of collapse today. Why? Because successive finance ministers and prime ministers and cabinet colleagues have looted the Indian public sector banks. Give loans to person A, industrialist B, corporate house C. They don't return the money. Give them loans again. They don't return the money. Give them loans again. Why? Everybody knows that there's a huge kickback. You give a loan and the bank takes 1% kickback, minimum 1% kickback. So your banks are on the verge of collapse. What I'm trying to say is that if you have discipline, like any democratic country ought to have, take Sweden as the model. You have discipline. You don't have corruption. You can't loot your banking system and do all other kinds of corruption. What's the point? What's the problem in the fiscal deficit? If black money goes out of the economy, if everybody buys a house in Delhi at the proper market rate, paying a check and buy it, where will be your fiscal deficit? Revenues will go through the roof. If you can just control corruption. It's an artificially created problem. And then you say we have a fiscal deficit, we can't feed people, we can't educate people, we can't give them medicines and doctors. Well, too bad. It's the same old UPA model. And the people of Delhi and the people of India are not going to buy it. And tomorrow are the elections in Delhi, so let's see what's going to happen. But I feel the people of India are fed up with these kinds of budgets. Fed up.